Well, good morning, everyone. My name is MightyStream, and I'm going to do our March the 14th just for today in a meditation. Hope you're doing well this morning. I'm still trying to decide, but I do have a lot of gratitude for the day, waking up. The title of the meditation is Relationships. So roll your sleeves up, okay? It's entitled Relationships. Also, our inventories usually include material on relationships. That comes from the basic text, page 29. What an understatement this is, especially in later recovery. Entire inventories may focus on our relationships with others. Our lives have been filled with relationships with lovers, friends, parents, co-workers, children, and others with whom we come in contact. A look at these associations can tell us much about our essential character. Often, our inventories catalog the resentments that arise from our day-to-day interactions with others. We strive to look at our part in these frictions. Are we placing unrealistic expectations on other people? Do we impose our standards on others? Are we sometimes downright intolerant? Often just the writing of our inventory will release some of the pressure that a troubled relationship can produce. But we must also share this inventory with another human being. That way, we get some needed perspective on our part in the problem and how we can work toward a solution. The inventory is a tool that allows us to begin healing our relationships. We learned that today, with the help of an inventory, we can start to enjoy our relationships with others. Just for today, I will inventory the part I play in my relationships. I will seek to play a richer, more responsible part in those relationships. Let's take a moment of silence followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. Moment of silence now, please. Thank you. God, grant us the serenity to accept things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, please, and thank you. Relationships, talking about the fourth step, right? Our inventories, writing our inventories, and how, there's a whole thing to be said about relationships and spending time looking at the part that we've played, looking at how we've interacted with certain types of relationships. And I guess I really want to emphasize that I have had sponsees go through, do their fourth and fifth step with me. And then years later or later, realize that they needed to really just do a fourth step, a whole inventory just on their relationships, in particular with the opposite sex, right? Those sexual, intimate, love relationships, not so much parents and children, but nonetheless, I can verify that this is true. Sometimes whole inventories have been spent on nothing but the topic of relationships. But one of the things that I came into the program thinking was that a relationship, the definition of that was intimate relationship, partner, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, that type of relationship. I will never forget my reaction the first time, and I can tell you who said it. I can tell you exactly who said it. I can tell you exactly where I was seated at the table in comparison to them. And they sat there and shared about relationships. And you know what they said? They said, I'm in a relationship with myself. I've been in relationships with my children, my parents, my aunts, my uncles, my grandma, my grandpa. Relationships go way beyond just who I'm sleeping with. And so I have to take a look at that, because a lot of the time, who I'm sleeping with, I can tell that type of relationship is affected by all of the other patterns I have in all of these other relationships. I was like, whoa, drop mic, right? Back then we didn't say drop mic. We was like, say it then. Or no, hit them in the head. Oh, I mean, we was outrageous back then. Cross talk like a mug, right? So, yeah, we don't consider affirmations like that as cross talking, right? We just, agreeing with the person. So I can remember the effect that had on me, and thinking to myself, whoa, okay, now I gotta take a look at those relationships, and I almost want to say those deeper relationships, right? Yeah. So where are you at with that? Enough of me, right? Giggling this morning, tired as heck. Didn't walk in the door till almost 10 p.m. Man, children hungry. Like, what? I'm in a relationship. I'm married. This should be taken care of before bedtime. Right? It's just the fellas when I'm not here. They just, munchy bunchy and eating junk and snack foods. And as soon as I hit the door, I mean, I could come in the house as quiet as a mouse. But as soon as I hit the door, all of the bedroom doors open and everyone gathers. Where I'm sitting right now is like the dining room, but it's an open space into the kitchen. And so when I open the door, everybody, zoom, 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 they all gravitate to the dining room area and they sit and watch. What is she gonna cook us? And I think to myself, I'm not cooking nothing. I'm going to bed, people. And they just look at me with those doe eyes of hunger. And I think to myself, you can make some quick sliders really, really quick and have everyone just so happy, bellies full. We might have an extra pound on our bodies by the next morning, but they'll be so happy. You can't deny them. And I get the flipping burgers and doing whatever I'm going to do. And I don't even eat it. I don't even eat it. And that's a relationship, right? That's a relationship. Those children and my husband, they have the strings to my heart. That is a relationship. Another relationship is the one I have with food, right? Right now, we're broken up. We are broken up, right? We are filing for a divorce. My knees are saying, yeah, we don't need all of that late night eating anymore. Especially if you're not going to the gym regularly, like you said you were. No. Yeah, so me and food, we're in the middle of a divorce. That's a relationship. Have you ever thought about that? What all qualifies as a relationship? Anything, anyone that you relate to, but in a sense, not so much inanimate things, ideals, institutions, and thoughts of things. You can have a relationship in your mind and the other person not be participating, right? It's not a relationship, because to relate, going back and forth, right, isn't there. It just isn't there. And so we need to be thinking about that today, right? We want to write our inventories and release some of the pressure of how we operate in relationships, of a troubled relationship. And sometimes when our relationships aren't good, the rest of the world can tell because of how we carry ourselves, usually defensive, right? Or for some people in a troubled, intimate relationship, they might start searching for other people to have sexual activity with. They become unfaithful because the intimate relationship they're in is not satisfying, and they're having trouble relating to each other, arguing all the time. It's not uncommon for a couple to later find out, after healing whatever was broken, find out that one or the other, or both partners in that relationship were not faithful, intimately, sexually speaking. And I would say, emotional infidelity, spiritual infidelity are the setup for the physical infidelity. And so there's ways of cheating on your mate without actually sexing anyone, right? And so these are things, now that we're in recovery, we have the opportunity to start looking at when it comes to relationships. It's nothing worse than being married to a person and finding out they have a wife or husband besides you, in the spiritual and emotional sense, that they have another mate outside of you, where they go and they have conversation and dialogue and talk about you. And it is very devastating to find out that your mate has been unfaithful mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And it causes you to doubt whether or not they're faithful sexually, right? And so those extra relationships, we have to be careful, especially with us in the program, right? We have to be careful because we like to get together and fellowship with one another and hang out with one another. And people get upset these days, I find more people upset these days when you say the men get with the men and the women get with the women. Well, now, because sexually speaking, it's more prominent. We hear more about men and men in intimate partner relationships and women with women. And so now the concept of just saying this is, safer for you emotionally, spiritually, and, sexually, if you stay with your gender in regards to talking the program, right? Your sponsor. We can't really technically assume that anymore. And so you get a lot more blowback than you used to in regards to that. Or some, I remember some women saying, I just get along with men better. Me and the women, I don't get along with women. And I thought to myself, the men say the exact same thing. I can remember telling a sponsee one time, she was inviting me to a women's meeting. And I said, why would I go to a women's meeting when I can go to a co-ed meeting and get twice the information? And she looked at me like, what? What? What are you even talking about? This is a women's meeting. Don't you get it? We're going to talk about our men together. I thought to myself, yeah, no, I'm not interested. But today I've grown and I'm interested in that sort of camaraderie, if you will. I've changed. I think it's healthy to sit with people that have very similar experiences and be able to talk about, right? Talk about some things in a manner that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily engage the opposite sex on. Your health, certain cancers that we get as women, and how that affects, how a hysterectomy might affect your feeling of being capable as a woman, that psychological effect that having had a hysterectomy, right, may have on a woman, right? Um, as with men, prostrate cancer and what that does to the psyche among men. You understand that. We don't have the same, we can say we've had cancer, we've been sick, but it affects us differently. And you kind of just want a safe place to have that conversation without feeling like you have to walk around on eggshells. And so we have relationships with all kinds of people. And this is an opportunity for us to look at in our inventories, to look at those relationships. Intimate partner, definitely at the top of the list, but not the only type of relationship on the list. How are we relating to our children, or are we not relating to them at all? Because those relationships have been severed due to our disease of addiction. Are we past blaming everyone for the fact that we were using? It's okay. So maybe you didn't have the best upbringing. Maybe you were in foster care. Maybe you were adopted. Maybe you were unhoused as a young person and experienced living in the streets, right? And you still carry that bitterness. Maybe you do. But at the end of the day, who picked up that drug, right? Did somebody shoot you up, or you picked the needle up and decided to get high, right? Right? That's why we talk about gateway drugs, because as teenagers, a lot of us used weed and alcohol. We talk about those as gateway drugs, but we don't talk about some of the other gateway mind and mood altering things that we experienced as young people and had relationships with as people, as young people, right? That lead us into picking up some of the more prominent gateway drugs that we talk about today, and so we have an opportunity to look at those relationships. What patterns did we establish with other people in our lives long before we were sexing anyone, right? Being sexually intimate and active, long before that, we had a relationship with our parents and usually our siblings, and we had patterns. If we take a good look at it, we were already establishing patterns. And so this is the point. We want to take a look at it and be mindful. The inventory serves to allow you to begin to look at the patterns, see the part that you play, and then as you move through the steps, you'll see that you start to receive some healing, because at a certain point after you've done your fifth step, now you're looking at becoming entirely ready for those character defects that cause those shortcomings or patterns to be removed from you, right? It's a beautiful thing to be in recovery today. Hey, listen, enough of that. I could go on and on and on about relationships. I want for you to have a beautiful day on purpose. I intend to talk to you tomorrow.